From about the mid to late 90s, we start to see the beginnings of master tempo or key lock. This ability to change the tempo of music without necessarily changing the pitch of the music. Which means whatever key, whatever pitch that song was originally recorded in stays the same no matter whether you're making it faster or you're making it slower. That was never something that could be assumed in the past. First of all, on turntables, we will have just a natural wobble of turntables. Not every turntable was calibrated identically. Some turntables will run a little fast, some turntables will run a little slow. So and if you're playing records, if they're running a little fast, they get a little higher pitch. They run a little slow, they get a little lower pitch. Now we're getting into the world of compact discs. We have digital music that runs on a much more precise clock. You can assume that when you're playing the CD at its original pitch, it's going to be at the same pitch that this CD is going to sound on any other compact disc player. It doesn't matter whether I have one on my left or one on my right, whether I'm playing one in Europe or in America or in Japan, the pitch is going to be the same. And in the late 90s, we start to be able to do digital signal processing on these signals that are encoded in the compact disc to be able to do fast Fourier transform. Take a waveform that's been encoded digitally either in real time because it's being converted from an analog to digital converter, or it's coming straight off digitally recorded media like a compact disc or a flash drive, and break it out to its component frequencies. So, if we've got a bass guitar, it's got what folks call the fundamental. It's got a particular note. Maybe it's low E. Okay, all right. That's the bass guitar. Once the processors know what that initial frequencies are, plus higher frequencies that might come out, say, possibly from the player's fingernails rubbing against the string, possibly because in addition to the string vibrating up and down, there's also harmonics. There's a second and third order harmonics. So instead of the wave just going up and down, it's also kind of like creating a wave within the actual string. And that wave might have any number of multiples in it. Or once you have all of these frequencies, the microprocessor can just say, all right, let's play those same frequencies, but faster. Or let's play those same frequencies, but slower. And therefore, you get this situation where you can play the same song faster and slower without actually changing the pitch. Which means now DJs can say, well, what is the pitch of this song? Now that we can rely on it, and we can say, if I'm going to go into the next song, do those pitches relate in a nice way? Is it in fact in the same key? Maybe it's in the same key, but it's slightly off in tempo. Well, now we can bring the tempos to match exactly the same without changing the keys, and we can play two songs on top of each other as if they were playing together in the same room, as if they were playing together in the same key. The soul song by the Spinners, I'll Be Around, and then I mixed it into this R&B song, which is The Weekend by SZA. They're both in the same key, and they're very similar in tempos, but there's actually like 7 BPM difference between them. So I kind of just met in the middle, and I played the two of them, allowing me to use the bass line for one song and the vocals from another song and just overlay them. And it sounds like they are singing together. That actually kind of gets us into this early 2000s explosion on mashups. Eventually, everyone kind of got sick of it. Is anyone really into mashups at this point? Like, hearing a very distinctive bass line or background. Yeah. So vocals on top of instrumentals. Now it's just part of like the standard DJ toolkit, as opposed to like the great big thing that everybody has to do. But being able to mix and key was just kind of one step towards that. Now, next week, I'll talk a little bit more about specifically taking acapellas and instrumentals and mashing them up together. But this is kind of the foundational knowledge. This is the core understanding that makes that possible, right? And to understand different keys of music, you have to understand first that in Western style music and in a lot of genres of dance music, although not necessarily all genres of dance music, the range of different notes that you can play is basically broken up into 12 tones that repeat over and over again. And then it repeats again. So this is where I started. This is where I ended. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, back to 1, right? So Western music theory basically tries to take 12 possible notes and give us 8 notes that out of that 12 that's more or less evenly spaced. And it calls that a scale. 12 doesn't divide by 8 neatly. But we only have these intervals to work with. And the different ways that we could possibly break that up gives us different scales. So for instance, what a lot of kids learn when they are in school is the C major scale, because it only uses the white notes on the keyboard. Right. That sort of song. It's like it's happy, it's cheery, it's super easy to play, because it's just using all the white notes on a piano. What's actually happening is that it's skipping a couple of those notes, and those are on a piano keyboard the black notes. The default will be, if you start on this note, you would skip 2 semitones, basically going to a whole tone, skip another 2 semitones, and go on to the next one. So instead of going, they're going. So they're skipping those intervals in a while. But every once in a while, you can't skip 2. Otherwise, you'll just end up with not enough notes. You won't be able to make 8. So you do these semitone skips. So becomes, so instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And these are called intervals. For any given scale, there are 7 intervals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, there are 7 intervals. There are 8 notes to get back to where you started. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so this is where I started. This is where I ended. And because there are 8, that's why we call them octaves. You know, octagons. The oct stands for 8. And this is how you get 8 notes. You have some whole tones and you have some semitones. So there are 12 semitones in Western style music, and that particular format of, you know, let's skip a whole tone, skip a whole tone, skip a half tone, skip a whole tone, skip a whole tone, skip a whole tone, skip a half tone. This particular scheme gives us the major scale. I think that's also called the Ionian mode. It's not the only scale. In fact, it's not even the most popular scale in dance music. Much more common will be something like the different kinds of minor scales. So it'll sound more like this. So I'm starting here, I'm ending here. In fact, minor scales are really, really common in most popular music. If you're like a monk composing church music for a Gregorian denomination or something, this is probably the scale that you work. That's why it's called A. This entire system was originally designed to play minor keys. And that's the easiest minor scale, which will be A minor. If you were to chart it out, again, we skip over that first semitone, then we go 1 semitone, skip, skip, 1 semitone, skip, skip. We ended up with the A minor scale. The thing though is that this and this actually map if you shift them a little bit. If you take, I think, this bit over here, just copy and paste it over here, you actually end up with this. So this is where we get relative major and relative minor scales. The C and the A minor actually use exactly the same notes, they just start in a different place. And if you were to play 2 songs, that one of which is in C, the other one is in A minor, and you play them on top of each other, they're all using basically the same notes. At least if it's a relatively simple type of song, they're all using the same sort of notes, even though the bass line might start and end in a different place. Maybe we have like a bass line that goes like, actually I think I have a song that does that. This is the first bar of the song, right? And it's just one note over and over again. This is what the bass line is doing. And then on top of that, there is this strange synthesizer sound. The key is where the scale starts, the C key. I can change the key to G, and then it becomes, so it ends in where it starts. It becomes a loop, right? Only it starts low, it ends high.
Scale is the pattern, and the key is what notes are in that pattern.
Yeah. That's a great explanation. The simple use of the word key will be, this is in the key of C, this is in the key of F, this is in the key of G. So an F key using exactly the same scale will be like, I will start from here. This is the F note. And then I go. So I start where I ended. But it's the same pattern, it's the same series of intervals as, which is the C scale. A C major scale sounds like this, which is one pattern. And then you switch the pattern up to the minor pattern, it sounds more like, okay? The gaps that you're hopping change, and thus you get a new pattern, even though you're starting from the same place, right? Again, this is the major pattern, and this is the minor pattern. It actually uses a lot of the similar notes. I think there are like 5 notes in there that are actually identical, but just those few little changes gives a very different vibe, right? A song that starts like this, pretty happy. A song that starts like this, that's housey. I don't know where. A house tune will probably have like 7s and 9s. But those are kind of the most common. That's not the only way. Both of these ways of splitting things out are not the only ways that music can be split up. In fact, if you ever think, oh wow, this song sort of reminds me of music from other cultures, they might in fact be using different scales, different patterns, even though they still have 8 notes going from the beginning and then looping over and over and over again.
I still have like discussion posts on the Canvas. I can put, like, I've recommended to friends sometimes that don't have a good basis in music theory. Like there are like, videos of music theory for like producers or music theory for people who don't need like intense background. Right,
yeah, I actually have a couple of good YouTube links that maybe I'll just put them up in the modules page. But I'm trying to sort of like do the bare minimum. So even if you don't have time to look it up. We've got this G note. 7 Nation Army is apparently 9, so let's see if we can make that work. That's a little bit strange, but it actually is in the same key. We've got an E minor song playing on top of a G, so we've got so that's an E note, and then we've got like a G note on top of that. This is what we're hearing. That's actually a funky chord. And that's the basis of like harmonic mixing. First of all, knowing what key a certain song is in, and then trying to find matches. Now, before it was possible to lock the keys of your music, some DJs were already doing this. And it was kind of like a secret sauce for the DJs that actually knew how to do this. It was never really explained very well. But a lot of DJs could still sort of like just put the headphones on, listen to a track as they're cueing it in on top of the track that is currently playing, and just says, wait, does this actually sound like it's in key? So even if they couldn't articulate why it sounded good, they will be able to, to listen to that blend in their head and just tell, okay, does this sound like it's good or does it sound like it's conflicting, right? Let me see if I can find something that sounds way off, right? Let's try levels. So we're just playing this one note again. These songs are not in key. It's off. It's off. In a song like Levels, when it begins, there isn't a lot melodically going on, but then it sort of slowly starts to filter in. And it becomes okay when you start, and then it gets worse and worse and worse as it plays, right? So that first part is fine. Now it's going bad. When you're mixing, if you have parts of your music that really don't have any melodic or bass line, anything that's associated with the keys, say you just have beats, you just have drum beats or something like that, you can always mix any other song on top of that because there are no notes to clash with each other. You just have beats. As long as your timing is good, you can make the blend. And I would say up until the mid-90s, the majority of DJs just did that. They just waited for parts of the music where there is no melodic information. Hip-hop is particularly good for this because a lot of folks are rapping instead of singing on top of things. And if they're just rapping over a beat, if there isn't even a bass line, then you can go from one rap song to another rap song without having to worry about key at all. You just have to worry about timing. But if you're going to do something like 2010s EDM, you actually have to start worrying about this because so much of what is in the track is melodic in one way or another. But just because you are playing something in a particular key doesn't mean that you have to stick with that key to make everything blend nicely. First of all, you don't have to worry about keys at all if you're doing a quick transition. If you're just jumping from one to the other very quickly, it doesn't really matter because you're never really playing the song on top of each other, right? Maybe you're just listening to it on your headphones and you sound, okay, the keys don't quite work over there. That just tells you, all right, let's make this a quick transition. It doesn't mean don't make the transition. It just gives you a clue on how you want to make that transition. It's like, I don't want to make this a long blend. And there's quite a large number of different ways that you can jump from one key to another, which is kind of where the phrase mixing in key comes on, although that's been kind of misunderstood lately. Mixing key is actually the name of a product, a piece of software that you can download that does analysis on your music. Although now Serato does that, Rekordbox does that, Traktor has done that for a very, very long time. Mixing in key is like Serato face. The fact that that's actually made its way in common DJ terminology is kind of an advertisement for Serato itself, right? It's like everybody uses Serato, that's why we have Serato face. There's this product called mixed in key, but really all it does is just, it's the computer making its best guess at what key your music is in. I like the phrase harmonic mixing instead because really that gets at the root of the problem. How do we play two tracks on top of each other so that they sound like they're in harmony, not necessarily having to force them to be in the same key? I should talk about why I've got them arranged in a circle. Okay, so let's just start with C. Actually, earlier we were hearing Black Eyed Peas. It was. If you actually count off these numbers, you can actually number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And these numbered intervals give us certain sounds that may or may sound better with each other. So here's 1 and 2 played at the same time. That's kind of it's got a discordant kind of rubby sound. 1 and 3, that's pretty nice. In fact, 1 and 3 tells us this is a major scale. Because if this was a minor scale, it would be, which also sounds pretty cool, but much darker, right? Compared to this. Okay, 1 and 4, that's nice. 1 and 5 is what's known as a power chord. At least guitarists call it a power chord. The way how those frequencies blend of any 1 and 5 kind of give us a really, really nice interaction between the frequencies. This is a 1 and 5. So that's a 1 and 5. The reason why we arrange it in a circle, first of all, there's 12 different keys, and then you could arrange it like a clock, because we're kind of familiar with arranging 12 things around in a circle when you look at a clock. But if you go around and just find the fifths from each key, from C, the fifth of the C scale is G. So this is C, this is G, and we've got our power chord right there. So really, all we're doing is the fifth of the C scale is G, the fifth of the G scale is D, and so et cetera, all the way around until we get back here. And it turns out that the fifth of F is C again. And now we're all the way back. This is why it's called the circle of fifths. But you could also call it the circle of fourths because you can read it backwards. And if you go from C to F, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, that's an F key actually, and it sounds like this. So you can go clockwise, you can go counterclockwise. So we've got F, we've got G, we've got C, and we've got the relative minor. Has anyone heard of the all music is 4 chords meme? These are the 4 chords. Whispering words of wisdom, let it be. 4 chords, and you've got, you can rearrange, of course, the order of those chords, but you get so many pop songs just out of those 4 chords. And it shows up in classical music. If you've been to a wedding lately, Pachelbel's canon is those 4 chords.
There's 2 guys called Axis of Awesome.
Yes, Axis of Awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a mashup. And that's not even using the same notes. That's using the same order of chords over and over and over again. If you notice how they're arranged, these are the chords I just played. This is C, this is G, this is A minor, this is F. So we've got these chords, and they all kind of work together. If you've got songs, that some of which are in C, some of which are in F, some of which are in G, some of which are in A minor, these keys actually do work really, really nicely, and you can actually, it gives you a clue, maybe I should try blending this. Maybe I could play one of these things on top of each other and it would sound good. Or even if you're not doing a long blend, even if you're making a transition, it sort of makes musical sense as a transition. You're going from a song that starts like this to a song that starts like, that goes to that. That actually could sound pretty good. Similarly, if you were starting from the minor scale, and again, the majority of dance music actually is in a minor scale, you can also go this way. If A minor is where you're starting, you can go up and down around this circle. So A minor, E minor, E minor, D minor, A minor. Those chords work well with each other. If you've got some sort of housey track, and every once in a while it goes, which is the C chord, and back to A minor again. All of these chords work nicely with each other. So wherever chord you are, you can just sort of go adjacent, left, right, across. That works pretty well. There's a bunch of different notations for musical keys. This is kind of academic music theory way of writing things. Keys like C, G, F, E minor, A minor, that sort of thing. I'm going to show you some other representations, which makes it easier for DJs who don't really want to think about music theory in the middle of a set.